Whatever you do, don't call this a Duster 3. It's not. It's the new Dacia, or as we call it in Ireland, Dacia Duster, which has got a lot of weight in its shoulders because this car has been a massive seller. Let me remind you, it's a no frills, no fuss car. But one thing this car probably can't be accused of anymore, certainly in this extreme trim, is not being a no frills car, because it has quite a lot of stuff that you can just use for practical items to get your family in comfort and practicality, whether it's the little modular cup holder that also has a torch, a shopping hook, or a curry holder as it's called for when you get your takeaway, whether you have the rail bars that can change direction to put surfboards on with just a quick flick of a key. We'll get to all that and how does this hybrid version drive. Eyeballing the car, you still get a sense that it's a Duster, but it does look quite different now. The shoulders of it are quite wide and pronounced. We have these valleys and grooves in the bonnet. It gives it a very rugged look, and that's something that Dacia are keen to talk about in this new Duster. There's a 4x4 version. It has a little bit more ground clearance than before, and actually it has best-in-class ground clearance if you do plan on take this thing off-road, or that's something that you do. Maybe it's, you know, camping holidays, things like that. That's as far as it's going to get. You've got different textures. You've got hard plastic down here. You've got the modern Dacia badge going on here. I've mentioned before on the spring video, but Volvo EX30 headlights. That's like you're getting premium headlights look in a Dacia. Now the price for this car hasn't been announced just yet, but just to remind you, the previous versions sort of mid-20s, and then the top spec would bring you to about 31. Quite similar to the top spec Jogger, which does share, this is a new platform, but they're all kind of sharing the spoils with each other, so to speak. So you got a little bit of air curtain action going over these wheels. Despite these being the upgraded ones, there's still enough rubber on these tires to give you quite a comfortable ride. And again, the ruggedness continues over the side of the vehicle. We have these really pronounced arches. Now, there's a lot of recycling characteristics to do with this car, including a little recycling imprint on the side here, and what that's translated into is these kind of speckles in the plastic. Now, some people will love it, and it gives you a sign of, you know, this is recycled materials, but it also looks like your neighbour's been getting their house painted and there's been a bit of wind and the painter has just sprayed the plastic bits on your car. So you might like that, you might not like that, but it's just worth pointing out. We have these kind of bronze copper mirrors going on. As I mentioned, the roof rails, which are very handy if you are an outdoors person, you like kind of action sports, you carry bikes, surfboards, all that kind of stuff. But certainly looking on this car side on, you know straight away it's got a few different personalities. The door handles are up here. They are usually quite high for younger people to be able to reach. But when you're inside here, there's plenty of leg room for your feet. You can also clip that modular box onto just the back of the armrest. You've got 2 USB-Cs, and there's plenty of space for your knees and feet. So I think kids in particular, you're sitting quite high up with a nice view outside of the vehicle. So these light clusters now have Dacia written engraved is the right word, but they're printed in the moulding of the light fixtures. Again, ruggedness is the name of the game at the back. You have this pronounced ground clearance. You've got more rugged bumpers. These are cheaper to replace and repair should they get whacked. More durable, I suppose, as well. We have a wiper, and we have Dacia badge across the back. The model name it's a kind of a weird material that you'd put on the back of your school books as a child, maybe. It's not your typical badge for the name of a car. And then we have access into the boot, which interestingly doesn't have a flexible parcel shelf. Again, for the price of the car, do I expect one? Not necessarily, but it's a family orientated car that would be handy to groove around buggies and bikes and all that stuff. No floor storage in the car, but what is impressive, you can get an LPG version of the Duster, as you have been able to do in the past, and also with the stepway and the Sandero and stuff like that. So if you fill both tanks, they claim up to 1,400 kilometers out of two combined tanks. But interestingly, the LPG version doesn't lose space the way they've managed to work it into the boot, so that is impressive. But certainly even Skoda, I think, would be watching this going, why didn't we think of this? So this is the the modular kind of cup holder, torch that comes off. This is the hook holder for, it also slides off. So you can actually, if you just wanted to use that, there's parts of the car that you can clip this into, including the back seat area, and then that opens out. So if you wanted to hang some sort of a shopping hook off there, it's clever stuff. Little Dacia logo there into the side. So a lot of good use, I suppose, you make of a family car that will take it all into the boot, and then has all these little clever bits as nice add-ons. Some of these, depending on your spec, are part of a pack, so not every version will get these, but I mean, who's not going to like one of them? Already mentioned that there's plenty of leg room. Here's the proof of the pudding, plenty of space. That driver's seat is set up from my position, about 5'9", but if you're obviously taller, you're going to encroach a bit in here. What is quite impressive is they've made efforts to, I mean, it doesn't feel, you know, it's quite flimsy, but it's headlining. A lot of cars have kind of soft headlining, but there's nice recycled textures to it, and it's grey, and it's just they've made an effort to not do more of the same, if you get me, and that kind of runs throughout the car in general. Very durable plastic, you know, it's hard. It's gonna wear well. We have jacket or coat hook holders on the back of the car. I'm not trying to remember, did we have them in the previous Duster? But again, they're just little touches that we didn't have before. 2 ISOFIX, 2 USB-C, don't have an armrest, and yeah, head height is very impressive. I think most people are going to be happy enough to fit comfortably in the back of this car, adults and teenagers alike. Up front, again, extreme model, but worth pointing out, you've got nice different colours and textures going on in the seats. The steering wheel, there is no animals or any of those leather products anywhere used in the car. No chrome. They've all been taken away from an environmental point of view, but whatever they've wrapped the steering wheel in, it's actually really good quality. Same graphics on the infotainment screen, excellent. The reversing camera, the resolution on it's not amazing, but it's certainly, you know, it's adequate. I wouldn't mind seeing it at night time to see what it's like. We've got a lot of physical buttons if you're a big fan of them. Floating shelf down here for, you'll fit a phone. You'll also fit a bag of sweets if you need them on your journey. We have the now iconic Dacia phone holder that will go portrait and horizontal. There are some little squeaks out of it. It's rattly, and it's not something, from the best of my knowledge, you can just remove from the dashboard, so you might have to put up with that. A lot of physical buttons going on, good graphics, and again, colour on the driver screen. You can actually lower and raise how high your speed and your consumption figures are, depending on how much information you want at the bottom of the screen. You can save a personal profile for all the safety aids, so if these warnings for speed and driver monitoring drive you mad, you can turn them off. You do have to do it every time, but you can select your own personal setting, and it's just one switch every time for that. Lots of other little clever things they've done, like they said they've reduced the size of the driver's manual for, again, environmental issues. Under here you've got a couple of drinks holders, little smaller space here. This, again, just bearing in mind some of the other modular bits they have, it would be very cool if you could maybe lift some of these things out, but you can't. Extreme models have wireless charging down here and 2 USB-Cs. And in case you forget what you're driving, you have Duster inscribed just here in front of the passenger. So it still feels Dacia. It still feels, I don't even use the word cheap. It doesn't feel cheap, but they certainly have kind of upped the game a little bit. Hopefully not enough to make the price go crazy, but it certainly feels more premium than the last couple of generations. Not that it was a really tough act to follow when it came to the interior, but as an overall package, it is, because people love these. They're affordable, they're practical. You can get them on finance for a couple of £100 a month, and that's why people who are not necessarily badge snobs or into cars, but just want something that gets them around in comfort, love these cars. And certainly if you've had one of these before, you will be impressed by this now 3rd gen version of the Duster. Let's go for a quick spin. Onto the driving dynamics of the new Duster. Again, this is the hybrid version of it, 140 brake horsepower, which on paper sounds like there is loads there, and generally speaking there is. There's the odd occasion where when you're overtaking, it gets quite loud, it gets quite strained. It's hanging on for dear life in a higher gear to give you that extra power, but it does get quite noisy. At the same time, if you're on a descent in a lot of hills, it's a 4-speed gearbox, so it's constantly sort of trying to pick the best gear for you. And again, that means it can be quite noisy. It's the equivalent of maybe dropping into third when really fourth would have been enough if you're familiar with your own car by that standard. So it can get a little bit noisy. Now, the speed sign recognition is easy enough to turn off. As I mentioned, you just go into driving assistance, you go into your own personal setting that's saved, and then whatever you like, whether you want blind spot on or off, whether, I don't know why you would ever turn that off, it's brilliant. Whether you want driver monitoring off or on, you can do that. So you've got to change that aspect every single time. Fuel consumption, 5.4 litres per 100 kilometres. We've done a lot of driving today, a good few hundred kilometres. That seems to be the norm. That's with a very good mix now of motorways, very steep inclines. You will better that. Not perhaps as good as something from Toyota in the hybrid sense, but it's not bad. That should say the car is just over 20% more rigid than the previous version of it. That results in less body roll. There's hill descent on the car if you're going down steep inclines, particularly if you're in a 4x4 version of it. That will be very, very welcome. But the seats are comfortable. Good visibility all round. I will say some of the metal or some of the plastic, harder plastics, when you're resting your legs against them, they do kind of dig into you a little bit, and it's a shame that some of these areas where you rest your arms aren't a little bit more comfortable. That would have raised the bar even more again. But I suppose there comes a fine line between, well, do you want it to still be affordable, or do you want luxurious, opulent, soft furnishings inside the car? Because you can't have it all. The cruise control is on the steering wheel, but the volume control is still kind of tucked away behind the steering wheel. It's no big issue because for me, you're probably going to use cruise a lot more than that. So at least, it's easy enough to reach your cruise control settings on it. Quite a bit of wind noise over the A-pillars on the motorway on our journey today as well. Sort of 110, 120 kilometers an hour. That gets quite noisy. But actually, around town, lower speed limits like 30 that I'm doing at the moment, it's very, very quiet. It's in EV mode, so you really don't hear an awful lot. So actually, if you're going to be driving this a lot in city centre environments, the school run, it will be very, very quiet and very, very efficient. An okay car to park size wise. Again, if you go for the higher spec versions, you get an overview on the camera, so that should make life easier for you if getting into tight parking spaces isn't your forte. But it's it's a large car, I suppose, in one sense, but it's also shouldn't be too awkward to park as well. It's still reasonable. It's a reasonable sized car compared to some of the huge monstrosities that are on the roads these days. That's about as noisy as it can get, and it's not changing air because there's no gears left. So that's when it does get a little bit noisy inside the cabin. But look, if you're considering this car as your next one, is it fuel efficient? Pretty much, yeah. 5.5 litres, what you kind of expect from a petrol hybrid. Taking it easy, you'll probably achieve better. Is it comfortable? Yes. Are the seats comfortable? Yes. Have you got a little bit of ride height, making it easier to get in and out of? Absolutely. And depending on which trim version you go for, you're kind of going to be spoiled with lots of different driving aids, of which you can decide which ones you want on and off. So from a driving enjoyment perspective, as much as I feel a typical Dacia Duster driver is going to be demanding, I think it's a job well done. I think this is a really interesting car from Dacia. I think they've managed to achieve the pressure of following the two. What is really important is price. We don't have it just yet. It still has to be, and hopefully will be, the car that people are like, yeah, but why would I want anything more than this? That's really important, that they retain that price point and sort of that slot in the market. If you're doing a lot of overtaking and you're going to be full of people a lot in terms of in your car, not full of people, overtaking is all right. It's when you need power. I wouldn't say it struggles, it just gets quite noisy, and it's it's not pulling like a train, put it that way. So if if you're towing, if you're fully on board with people, might be something to consider. But again, if you're not, like where we are in Malaga today, lots of hills, if that stuff doesn't feature in your everyday driving situation, it's not really too concerning. Overtaking on the flat on the M50 is not going to be as much of an issue, but things can get noisy from time to time. I think it looks pretty good actually. It looks more rugged, a little bit more different contrast going on, makes it maybe not look as bland as it used to be. And it's still very much, the ethos of the Duster as far as I'm concerned. Again, it just comes down to price. Let me know what you think of this new car. Have you owned one of these in the past? What sort of mileage have you done on it? A lot of people comment to tell me, I had so many kilometers, so many miles, trouble free. I know a lot of you will be commenting about NCAP ratings and all that kind of stuff. Hasn't been announced for the car yet, but certainly with the addition of things like blind spot and driver monitoring, you can assume a lot of the safety aids that sometimes are more pro-pedestrians than not necessarily anything being wrong with the car. You'd expect an increase in that with some of the safety features that are now on the new Dacia Duster. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.